How many times have I said this offseason that new Kings general manager Scott Perry has inherited a mess? He was given the keys to this Kings mobile that is completely trashed inside and out and was given one wash rag to try and clean things up, right? And to expect everything to be shiny and new and fixed in one off season is not realistic, but you can make progress. And on today's show, Jake Gadon from CBS 13 here in Sacramento joins me, and we will talk about the moves that Scott Perry did make, grading those moves, and just putting a general understanding on how the first offseason of the Scott Perry era in Sacramento went. It's all right here for you on Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all offseason and soon to be all preseason long. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports anchor and reporter for ABC 10 News. We are officially less than a week away from Sacramento Kings Media Day. How exciting is that Media Day being the crazy kickoff to preseason training camp, right? It's here. We've pretty much made it. We've made it through this crazy, boring, strange, whatever word you want to use to describe this offseason. It's been a strange one. And Scott Perry, of course, took over almost immediately, right? The Kings got embarrassed in the play-in tournament by the Dallas Mavericks, and Monty McNair was fired immediately after that. And very soon Scott Perry was hired, and here he goes. He's had these summer months to try and clean up what he can clean up and change what he can change. And the moves he did make, we're going to focus on, we're going to break down, we're going to talk about today. Jake Gadon does a fantastic job covering the Sacramento Kings, local sports, national sports over at CBS 13 here in Sacramento. And he finally gets to make his Locked On Kings debut. Shame on me for not having him on sooner. But here is my conversation with CBS 13's Jake Gadon. New King seasons mean new guests, and this guy shouldn't be a new guest. He should have been here a long time ago. My friend here on the Sacramento media scene for CBS 13, it's Jake Gadon joining me here on the Locked On Kings podcast. Jake, it's a pleasure to finally have you on, my friend. We're gearing up for Media Day, which is less than a week away. Then the chaos truly begins for us here in Sacramento, and we're going to finally get to see Scott Perry's early vision in action and Doug Christie as a full-time head coach in action. We're going to focus primarily on Scott Perry on this episode today and talk about just kind of his first offseason and grading his offseason. But I guess first and foremost, before we get into that, just general feelings about the approach of this Kings season. Are you excited for Kings basketball to be back? Are you apprehensive about how you expect this team to do? Do you think it's going to be a mess? Do you think there should be more optimism? What's your general vibe, I guess, around the Sacramento Kings going into this Media Day and training camp?
I would say mixed emotion, right? A level of uncertainty, a level of curiosity of what this thing looks like this year. You know, we talk about how last year was such a up and down roller coaster season. I think we're in for another roller coaster ride, Matt. Like, to be honest with you, just because we don't know what this team will look like at the end of the season. Do they keep the same core together? Do they blow it up? How does this whole thing work, right? It's a lot of great pieces, and when I say pieces, I mean players on this roster that can definitely help contribute. But how does it all come together? That's where my vibe's at. I just don't know if I should be excited about this team or if I should have just absolutely zero expectations heading into it, right? I think right now when you go as a fan, you always have that level of excitement because of a new NBA season and not knowing how the team is going to look like. And you have all these new pieces running the show, and you hopefully hope the dysfunction that was there last year is gone. But at the same time, you also have to be realistic. Like, we saw what this team was down the stretch last year. And yes, they didn't have a full offseason to kind of get together or a training camp to figure it all out. But at the same time, it looked great at some points, and it looked like a disaster at others. And I don't know if time is going to fix that moving forward. I don't know if a training camp or continuity is going to have that moving forward. But I do know this. We're going to get answers soon, Matt, and hopefully it's not as bad as some of us are predicting, not only in the media, but in the fan base as well.
Look, Jake, I'm okay with another roller coaster ride. Just how about none of the junior high drama that we had last year? So roller coaster, I'm good with the ups and downs, but if we have to talk about who's upset in the locker room or who's dating who, I'm okay. Like, let's just focus on basketball this season. Can we do that at least?
Yeah, no middle school drama this year. Let's leave that to 2024, and I'm with you, buddy. Let's keep it professional and have some fun with it.
Well, I think that's what so much of this season is. Like, if I were to put what is this season about, and this might make some Kings fans roll their eyes and go, great, it's going to be a lost season. To me, it's discovering which players on this roster fit this Scott Perry / Doug Christie vision and which don't. Right. And like, to me, by the end of this year, if we don't have at least a clear idea, visual example, understanding of, okay, this is the new Scott Perry era. This is this new, this culture that they're trying to build. If we don't have a clear example of that, and we know, okay, Keegan Murray fits with that, but Zach LaVine clearly doesn't, or whatever, like by the end of this season, then what's the point, right? To me, that's what this year is all about. And that's not the most exciting way to approach a basketball season, but you have to accomplish that goal at least, right?
Of course. I think that's part of Scott Perry's 6 core identities for this year is establishing a culture, establishing an identity, and knowing who wants to be here or who doesn't. Matt, correct me if I'm wrong. It's like he has this saying that's like, we don't want to have hostages. We want to have
volunteers.
Yeah, we want to have exactly. So I think that's a pretty telling quote right there, what he is looking for this year. We've talked to him plenty of times after he got hired, and I think he does have the buy-in from the players, the ones that he met this summer, specifically Domas and Levine and DeMar. I am intrigued, though, when we hit training camp is how much buy-in he has from the young guys, because the older guys are professionals. They've been around the block. I am intrigued to see what the Keegan Murrays and the Keon Ellises and how much they have buy-in heading into this year. And then, of course, the pieces that they brought in with Maxime and Neat Clifford, and see what their buy-in is as well, because they're going to need it, right? Like, they need to establish a culture and a winning culture and how you're going to go about this. And I hate to say it is a reset, Matt. You're not wrong. It is a reset. We thought that the reset was going to be year one of the Beam team. Like, I think this is another reset 3 years later, and you're going to have to establish a new culture and a new identity, which hopefully will be great defense, toughness, rebounding the basketball, and playing fast. Simple as that.
We're going to do something that's a little unfair / impossible to do. We're going to grade or at least unpack and review Scott Perry's first offseason as the Sacramento Kings GM, knowing full well, by the way, that like it's incomplete, number one, and number two, that he inherited a mess and he needs more than one summer to clean the mess up. So we're going to pay attention to the moves he did make, the moves he didn't make, who's here that's new, who's still here, who's under contract, who's not. And we're going to kind of hyper-focus on at least what Scott Perry, the small areas where Scott Perry was able to put his stamp on this team and kind of judge his offseason based off of that. So when I say like grading Scott Perry's offseason or your first impressions of Scott Perry's first full offseason as a Sacramento King, like what's the first thing that comes to mind for you? Is it a positive? Is it a whatever, like kind of meh? Like how would you sum up in your mind the first few months of Scott Perry's tenure as general manager here in Sacramento?
So you asked me this a couple days ago, and I had a couple days of marinating in this. If I look at Scott Perry's first offseason, like you said, he was handed a deck of cards on which he really couldn't do much. But what he could do was things that I thought that they really needed to establish and add to this team. So let's start at the draft, right? I love the idea of going up and getting a first-round pick in Nick Clifford, who fell in the draft, a versatile wing that can play the 2 through 4 position. He is just a lunchbox full of things he can bring to the table in terms of defensive prowess, good rebounding, high IQ, good ball skills, can shoot when needed, can play off the dribble. And then also Maxime Reynaud, and bringing him in behind Domantas Sabonis as a guy that could possibly fit next to Domas in the starting lineup, could back him up. I think that is a storyline we're going to keep an eye on heading into training camp. So when I look at the draft, I thought he absolutely knocked it out of the park in terms of 2 players that can be plug and play right away. How much playing time they'll get off at the start of the season if they're in the rotation is, like I said, something we're definitely going to keep an eye on. I think both guys could possibly crack that top 10 lineup. Neek over Maxime a little bit more just because of what Neek can bring to the table. And then he took care of the one thing that they really needed to address this offseason, which was finding a point guard in Dennis Schroeder. And as the offseason goes on, and there's more Euro basketball that I've watched in this offseason than I've ever watched before, that Dennis Schroeder signing looks better and better every single day. I think it was averaging 20.7 assists in the Euro basketball tournament, was named EuroLeague MVP, and led Germany to a gold medal. I love what I saw from Dennis and what he was able to do. He wasn't just like the overall shot maker. He was a distributor. He was a playmaker. It's exactly what the Kings need. And I keep on asking myself, and maybe we can dive into this, Matt, is why people keep on passing up on Dennis Schroeder. Why does he not feel like he has found his fit in the NBA? I think he's been over half the teams in the NBA so far. You know, the Warriors got rid of him halfway through the season after acquiring him last year. I'm trying to still scratch my head of why he hasn't found a home or found a fit in the NBA yet. But when you look at those are the 3 big moves he's made this offseason, Matt. Like, there's not much else he could have done. I know there was a lot of conversations about the Jonathan Kuminga stuff, and I think at the end of the day, he's trying to go for it. He is trying to make a move to acquire a guy like Kuminga that's a young, budding star that could be plugged into the starting lineup and move Keegan to the 3-guard spot and see how that kind of works. But that's all up to what the Warriors want to do this offseason, so Scott really doesn't have much of a say of what they're actually going to do. So like I said, for the moves that they have actually made this offseason, I have a positive feeling about it. My negative feeling is there's just not many moves to be made, right? Like you're kind of strapped for what you could do. You couldn't, moving some of these contracts when it comes to Levine or when it comes to DeMar, you're kind of strapped. And I think you look at those moves maybe at the trade deadline if the season doesn't go well. But right now, heading into the season, I'm okay with the offseason moves. They established what they wanted to do in terms of finding a point guard, finding some versatile wings, and a backup center. And now we got to see how the rest of it looks.
This episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by Monarch Money. Most people can't name all of their financial accounts or what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, your properties, your investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up actually leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your phone. Monarch is built for people like you and me with busy lives, right? If you've put off organizing your finances or it's been too daunting of a task, even overwhelming just to start, Monarch is for you. It does all of the heavy lifting. You can link all of your accounts in minutes. It's so simple, and you see immediately clear data visuals. You'll get smart categorization of your spending, and you'll finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. Monarch Money is huge for whether you're balancing your individual finances and looking for ways to improve your spending, or if you're trying to save for a big purchase. Monarch Money helps you with everything. And if you're like me, a family man that's trying to balance the financial spending of a family and everything going on in this very inflated economy right now, Monarch Money is so clutch. So don't let financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off of your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNBA. Another saying that Scott has used a lot in addition to his volunteers, not hostages line, he keeps talking about wanting to be opportunistic and prudent. And I think his approach to this offseason and his approach to the Jonathan Kuminga situation is a perfect example of that. Here's an opportunity to acquire a super young, high upside wing, but I'm not going to be ridiculous and make a knee-jerk reaction trade that I don't have to make to go out and get the guy right now and help the Warriors out more than I have to when they're the ones in the sticky situation. And if that results in the Kings not landing Jonathan Kuminga, well, so be it, because Scott Perry also knows that he's not a Jonathan Kuminga away from being a contender here in Sacramento. It's about acquiring a piece for the future, not acquiring a piece to help them win right now. And that's very different, I think, from what we saw at the end of the Monte McNair tenure, and the perfect example of that, whether we want to call it a Monte move or an ownership move. The Zach LaVine trade at the end of the season never really made much sense, but it happened. And I think we both know that's something that Scott Perry would probably never, ever have done. In terms of the Dennis Schroeder signing, what's funny is I like the Dennis Schroeder signing, and the biggest negative about Scott Perry's offseason that I've seen, the Keon Ellis decision to pick up his option. The negative has to do with the contract, which means the negative has to do with not right now, essentially, because Dennis Schroeder is one of the best point guards on the market. The market wasn't great, and the market hasn't been great this entire summer. This offseason has been one of the worst offseasons around the league, period, just in terms of like fun and free agency signings. Everybody has scared money. It's ridiculous. But you went out and you signed a point guard that, yes, has bounced around the league. You asked, why do we feel he hasn't found a home? A little bit of that is self-inflicted. He got a fat contract offer from the Lakers, which he turned down to bet on himself. And he shouldn't have done that. And he's bounced around the league a lot since then. He was really good in Brooklyn early in the season, to where the Nets had to trade him because they were winning and they wanted to tank. He went to the Golden State Warriors, where he never fit that system. So I don't really blame Dennis for what happened in Golden State. That was just a terrible fit. And then he was really important backing up Cade Cunningham and helping them in Detroit not just make the playoffs, but actually play well in that first round of the playoffs. So I think Dennis Schroeder is a solid signing, a solid player, but it's the third year that fans are a little worried about. You're paying Dennis Schroeder for 3 years. Well, he had to make it a 3-year deal in order to try and execute the sign and trade. And obviously he was trying to be more aggressive with including Malik Monk in that, and that didn't work out. The Keon Ellis thing, I think, is the easy thing to point to as, yeah, that could really come back to bite you. And Perry is leaning on, I guess, his people skills to be able to maintain a level of trust and conversation between himself and Keon's camp over the next year to say, hey, we needed to save money right now, or we needed the money right now to make another move, but you're still a priority. He will be judged very harshly if Keon does walk in free agency and doesn't re-sign. But if he does, 6 months from now, or whenever he's eligible to in like February or March, then we're not even talking about the Keon situation anymore. So overall, like, I think it's a good thing, Jake, that the biggest negatives that we can come up with about Scott Perry's offseason are pretty much related to contract and not actual personnel.
Agreed. And I think the contracts are going to get to see themselves out because they're just tied up with money right now. It's just simplistic as that. Like, when you're paying LaVine the amount you're paying, and you're paying DeMar the amount you're paying, you don't know those two guys are going to be on the roster by the end of the year. That's where I think you're going to sit there and say, okay, then maybe you can pay Keon what he's looking for. You can give Keegan his extension that he has been looking for. And I think those are the things where Scott has to be open, honest, and direct, not only with the agent of both those guys, but both the players as well. And just be like, hey, patience is a virtue. We love you. We think you're a very much part of our future here in Sacramento. If you give us time, we'll figure it out. And sometimes it's hard for that generation because they're the generation of now. I want my money now. Yeah. But if they wait, maybe even like you said, until February or March, different conversation then.
I asked Chris Biederman this yesterday. I'm very curious about your thoughts on this. And this is without any of the context of this season and how this season plays out. If you were to prioritize the extension of one of these two guys, Keegan Murray or Keon Ellis this season, like which one you would make the priority to get done? It's a horrible question because ideally you'd get both. But if you were to pick one of them, like to prioritize, like we got to get this done first, which of those two is that?
I would say Keegan just because of the fact he can guard 1 through 4 compared to Keon could probably guard 1 through 3. I think Keegan has a better shot making ability than Keon. But I also want to see more from Keegan this year.
Yes.
Like I think that's where I'm at. I'm like Keegan can no longer be a guy that's your fourth option on this team. I want to see Keegan Murray be able to take over games. It's his third, fourth year in the league, Matt. Like, here's the time to show what you're all about. I want you to be able to see you take the ball off the dribble, go to the rim, and have your nice little wiggle when you get to the basket and see if you can get something done. Show me more than one or two post moves. Show me that you can be more than just a sharpshooter from deep. We know you're a phenomenal defensive player because we've seen it in multiple occasions over the past couple of years. We know you're a high-level elite rebounder, but I want to see the shot-making and the playmaking ability on offense. Then it would be a slam dunk, okay, Keegan over Keon. The thing that Keon does have is sometimes he does take these risks, which I do sometimes want to pull my hair out, and I'm like, oh, my God, this is an incredible play. But Keon has some playmaking ability to be able to get to the rim, distribute the ball as a point guard, as a I don't know, as a distributor, not even just a point guard, but a shooting guard as well. And that's where maybe he has the leg up on Keegan, excuse me. But if you're asking me who I'm choosing between both, Keon is more of a guy that you can find in the NBA in terms of a 3-and-D guy that you can find. They're rare, but not as the Keegan Murray is more rare than anything, and I think that's a guy that you have to keep on your roster and got to prioritize a little higher.
Yeah, the biggest thing working in Keegan's favor is he's 6'8", right? And the Kings just don't have that. If Keon Ellis were 6'6", he'd be the perfect player. He literally would be the perfect player. Poor guy is 6'2", 6'3", but
maybe he grows his hair out. Grows his hair out a little bit more, and
I don't know whatever he can do to somehow find a way to get a little bit taller. But we know Keon how important he is, and again, I think the correct answer is you try and get both of them back, and I think the Kings will try and get both of them back. But we'll see how that whole thing plays out. But Jay, you're talking about Keegan. I did yesterday's podcast was I asked the question, and it's kind of a harsh question, but might be true. Like, is this the last year? Is this Keegan Murray's last chance to show that he has the capability of being an elite 3-and-D wing in the NBA? Like, is this the last year? Because it feels like, and what I'm afraid of, and I don't blame Doug Christie for this, by the way, because Doug has to figure out how to make everything work and how to make Sabonis and Levine and DeRozan work specifically. Like, how it feels like we're on a one-way track to Keegan Murray becoming what Harrison Barnes was on Beam Team 1, which is you kind of stand in the corner and catch and shoot threes and you disappear. And again, like, there's only one basketball and there's only so many shots to go around. And it's like, Keegan, you can't let yourself become that. It's great that you're a good teammate and you want to fit in and stuff like that. But I know you and I have talked about this. How many times, Jake, has that man scored 11 points in the first quarter and then shot the ball twice for the rest of the game? It's like, dude, I love the personality. We love to kind of tease Keegan for just not smiling and the man of 2 or 3 words. But man, you're 25 years old now. Like, you can be a little more assertive to demand the basketball. I feel like this is, and I think Scott Perry is looking at Keegan to like, hey, show me that you can be a little more assertive and be a little bigger of a part of this team, especially if you're going to be part of the core of my vision going forward.
I agree with you, but I also think Keegan is a product of his own environment, right? I don't think his role has been being the guy.
No,
and
never.
That's why I think that's the tough conversation we have to ask Doug over the next coming weeks of when you look at Keegan Murray and the skill set and what he brings to the table, can you add more to his plate? Do you feel like you can trust him to be an offensive distributor, an offensive playmaker? And if so, do you have to implore that on him, or does he have to implore that himself? Because Keegan, like you said, is a little soft-spoken, a little more reserved. He has never been the guy saying, I need the freaking ball. Give me the freaking ball. Let me take over the game. And that's where we've seen it, where it's like in the third or fourth quarter, he had 11 points and was 4 for 6 in the first quarter and was shooting lights out, and then he disappears in the second half. I want Keegan, and I don't know if this is in his DNA or if he has the ability to do this, but saying, I want to be the guy this year. And if I'm cooking in this game, don't try to find me. I want to find it. I want the ball to come to me. I'm going to demand the ball because I'm feeling my wiggle right now. Let's make this thing happen and win the game and like the beam. That's what I'm looking for Keegan. I don't know if he's ever been like that in his whole basketball career because of the reserved person that he has been. But he wasn't like that at Iowa because he was just the guy at Iowa. That was just clearly it. I don't know high school-wise if he was ever that guy either because, again, he was just the best guy on the floor. That's the trait that I want him to develop this year is I want to be the guy. I want to be the takeover guy. That doesn't mean he has to do it every night, though, Matt. But what I do want to see is when he is cooking, when that three-point shot is working, when he's being aggressive to the rim, and he has 12 points in the first half or 14 points in the first half, and he's averaging almost close to a double-double by the third quarter, and the fourth quarter comes around and it's a tight game and he's feeling it, take over the freaking game. Because if you do, you might win it. And if you don't, at least if we don't win the game and he still tries to take over, I still look at that as improvement because I see that as something of a guy trying to force himself into the game and make an impact on the game. Again, though, will that happen? Will DeMar DeRozan demand the ball in the fourth quarter? Will Zach LaVine want it? That's the questions I have. I think that's the questions of what role will Keegan be put in this year? Will he be back into the Harrison Barnes, Keegan Murray role of him sitting there being the corner guy at the third or fourth quarter, being the lockdown defensive player and being the third option? Or will he turn into a guy that can be the main option coming down the stretch to win a game in the fourth quarter?
Like I said at the top of the show, today's episode of Locked On Kings is also brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure that you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. $5, that's it. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. FanDuel is so much fun. It fits however you like to bet, whether you're into player props, building a same game parlay, so a bunch of different bets involving the same game that you're watching, or even jumping in live as the action is unfolding in front of you. Maybe you're watching a game and you're like, I want to get involved. I think I know how this game is going to go. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team on Sundays or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, it's easy, and it's the best way to add a little more energy to those football days. So if you're ready to play, download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Tying this back into Scott Perry, too, I think a benefit of this offseason, and maybe it's a super low bar, Jake, but it's like Scott didn't do anything silly. Like he didn't include a bunch of future draft assets to go out and make a crazy move, like going out and getting Trae Young, for example, or something like that. As fun as that would have been and chaotic as that would have been, like he didn't do anything kind of silly and win now crazy like that. But we can't grade this, but we can discuss it, how he potentially approaches the trade deadline this year, right? Is that the time that he can move on from DeMar DeRozan to free up a little bit of cap space to a contender who's looking for a veteran to help them push through? I don't think he's going to be able to move Zach LaVine or Domantas Sabonis' contract, so he might just be stuck with those until they run their course. Does he use Keegan Murray potentially as like, hey, it's not working, maybe we can turn you into a future first round pick and I can start to even stockpile more draft assets? That would be a move that would probably be hard to sell Kings fans, but maybe that's an option too if it's not going well. Like how would you, if you're projecting right now, you're shaking your head, if you're projecting right now the approach to the trade deadline, what would you expect Scott Perry to do or want Scott Perry to do? Of course, depending upon how the season is going.
I think you start, DeMar DeRozan's the number one spot. That's where you start. If you're not in the place where you want to be, I think DeMar is the one where you got to ship him out, not because he's a bad player, but because he's an older player. He's looking to contend and looking to win a championship now. That's where you start. If you're going to sit there and tell me that you want to ship off Keegan Murray, a guy that could be, you're talking about setting a foundation, well, he's exactly what they're asking for and what they're looking for as a player. A tough-minded guy that plays great defense, rebounds well, pushes the ball, has not a me mentality, has an us mentality. good in the locker room. Like, I would be floored, not because I love Keegan as a player, but because he's exactly what they're preaching of what they want as a player. So I would be very, very, very disappointed if they even entertain that conversation, because again, he was a first round pick. He was a top 5 pick, Matt. I don't know how much better you can get out of that pick. I think for him, he needs to be a guy that you've got to have your established identity run through him. And if you're looking at the trade deadline, you're looking at DeMar. I would look at Keon if things aren't looking well and see what you can get out of him. Because the reason I say that is Keon was an undrafted player. You developed him, and if you can sell him off for a first-round pick,
yep,
pretty good return right there. I think the other guys that you're looking at, there's some. What's Devin Carter's role?
I don't know.
You spent a 15th overall pick on him, right?
Perry didn't.
Yeah, but that's another guy where I say, like, where is he going to be at? And we both love this guy to death and think he's one of the best guys to cover and just a pure treat to be around in Malik Monk. But that's another guy where his name has been all over the news this summer of a guy that could be moved. Would he be a move for a contender? That could be a possible, play for someone that is looking for a spark plug to come off the bench like he did with the Beam Team 1 a couple of years ago. Those are the names I'm floating out there. It's been the same names this summer. DeMar, Devin, Malik.
Yeah.
And that's because DeMar because of the old age, Malik because of the contract and what he can provide off the bench, and Devin because I don't even know what his freaking role is with this team. I like Devin. I think he's a good guy. You didn't show me enough in Summer League to say that he can be the backup point guard. And his injury list continue. Like, every single time Devin Carter moves his shoulders in a game, I hold my breath and say, okay, here we go again. So if you're looking at the trade deadline, early trade deadline, which is still 6 months away, and we haven't even picked up basketball, those are the 3 guys I'm looking at.
We'll wrap up with this, Jake. There's a million storylines or things to pay attention to, or I guess intriguing things going into training camp. Is there anything in particular? The correct answer is, for our jobs, we're going to have to tell a bunch of stories and figure a bunch of things out. But like when we get let in for the final couple of minutes of training camp on day 1, and we have our first opportunities, even at media day, to ask questions like, what is a storyline or something you're really, really curious about? I'll give you an example. Like Chris Biederman, when I asked him this yesterday, wanted to see what the buy-in was from the veterans. Like, how are they like, we're going to be professionals and do our job? Or are they going to be like, this is like, we're doing something new. We're trying something here. We're going to bring the young guys in and we're going to prove everybody wrong, right? How bought in are they? It's funny considering Mike Brown used to make everybody sign a contract to say you're 100% all in. So I don't think Doug will do that. But give me a storyline, a training camp storyline that you're just really curious about or looking forward to cover.
So can I give you 3? Is that
absolutely? Okay? Fire away.
Okay, the first one is more rotational based. Who is the backup point guard? Who's coming in underneath Dennis Schroeder? Does that look like Malik? Is that Devin? Is that Keon? Or is that a plethora of guys where you just play a bunch of shooting guards and maybe you have DeMar or Zach bring up the ball? Right.
Good one.
That's number 1. Number 2, how much of an impact the young guys are going to have in the rotation. And I'm talking about how much time you see Nee Clifford, Keon Ellis in the rotation playing with the guys. The third one is kind of what Chris put in there in terms of the buy-in to the guys. I'll take it a step further. How does it work? What the plan that Doug puts out together, how does it work, and do they like it? Because there's times last year where I think everyone was frustrated with how everything was working cohesively within the team. With DeMar taking over in the fourth quarter, will the ball truly run through Domas? And will he be happy about it? Will Zach LaVine still be able to get up his shots and still be able to remain healthy again this year? Those are the questions that all come together of, yes, you can call it a buy-in and have everyone buy in, but truly just offensively, systematically, how does this work? Who gets the ball when? We started this podcast with, a collection of really great players that do not seem to fit together and do not understand what role each person is going to have. So when they get given those roles at the end of training camp, and we get let in and get to see what that gets to look like, do those roles work for each player that they've been given? Or is it kind of a mosh posh of really good talented player that we're just hoping that can work together at the last second?
Jake, how about just a basic two-man game between Domantas Sabonis and both Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan? Like, can we start there? How they didn't do that last season drove me nuts. It drove me nuts. Because
I think it's two different ways of playing two-man basketball. I think with DeMar, DeMar and Zach like getting the ball in different places when you're playing the two-man game. Mm-hmm. I think DeMar likes it getting ball high.
Yep.
Zach likes it low. Zach likes to be able to go off the bounce and be able to pull up from three, while DeMar would rather get the bad matchup, beat you down low off of his, baseline J or his foul line J and go from there. Compared to, like I said, Zach is a different guy. I would say even Malik. Can we get more of Malik's two-man game off the bench with DeMar or with Domas and kind of go from there? I'm intrigued, by the way, to see what Maxime Reynaud's two-man game also looks like. I think that will be an interesting thing to look at.
The point is, though, if you're paying Domantas Sabonis nearly $50 million a year, use him, right? And he's second to Nikola Jokic in what he can do offensively, like as a play through him. And when you were a beam team one in the DHO game, that's what opened things up for you. So sometimes you don't have to make things and reinvent the wheel. Just lean on the strengths of your team. And I think that's something that when we're looking at Doug Christie versus Mike Brown, that's probably what Doug Christie maybe does a little bit better is he empowers his roster for what they are versus what he wants them to be. That being said, Doug is going to look at everybody and go, you better play defense or I'm going to bench you. So,
and who's the leader out of the group too that tells everybody to do that? Is it really going to be Doug every single time, or
is
who's
it
going to
Schroeder?
Because we've asked this when we had Domas's camp. Like Domas, I was like, "Are you ready to be the main guy, the lead guy, like to take over the roster to lead this team?" And he's like, "Eh." It's like, no, buddy, you're the freaking face of the franchise, bud. Like, embrace it. Let's rock and roll. That's what I want to see coming from someone.
Well, this season might be a mess, Jake, but it also might be really, really fun. And there are going to be highs for sure. There are going to be some crazy moments, whether it's like Zach LaVine taking over a quarter or fun moments in the Golden One Center. And there's going to be some lows probably too, I imagine. But no matter what happens, of course, you are going to keep us covered over on CBS 13 about all of it. Plus your Washington Huskies, of course. We'll always see plenty of Washington Huskies and New York Yankees stuff going on in Jake Gadon land. So if you're a Husky fan or a Yankee fan, connect with Jake too. Jake, pleasure, my man. We got to do this more often. We'll touch base during the season sometime, and maybe we'll need to just kind of kumbaya and get ourselves through it, because sometimes as media, the roller coaster can make us sick, and we can't get off. We're not allowed to get off.
Buckle up, Buttercup. We're going on a ride.